Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Russell Wilson calls out the team and says they need to be more disciplined because they were not these past couple of weeks. Also, there's an injury update on players like George Pickens, TJ Watt, and more. But first, before I get more into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also like this video. Now, let's get right back into it. So, Russell Wilson and Arthur Smith within the last few days were talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. And Russell Wilson, he says it's unacceptable how the Steelers played and how undisciplined they are because of the penalties. The media asked him about the penalties and he says it's unacceptable how we played. I think we got to be sharper. Obviously, we have a big week coming up. We've got to respond. So, he thinks it's unacceptable with how much penalties the Steelers are getting and need to be sharper and more disciplined and not have those penalties hurt their offense. And also, Arthur Smith, he was talking about this offense as well, and he says they start way too slow. And not just talking about the beginning of the games in which the Steelers are struggling to score points in the first quarter, but he's talking about to start a drive, to start on first down, second down. Their Steelers are starting off so slow, and he compared it to an old truck. He said as the old truck gets going later on in the drive, it starts doing well, but at the beginning, it's really hard to get going with that truck. And he compared that to the offense. On first down, the Steelers are struggling. On second down, they're kind of relying everything on third downs, and they're also relying everything to happen later on in the game. So that analogy to an old truck is really a good one. The Steelers need to get going quicker and not just on later in the game and having their whole offense be in the second half, but they need to get their offense going in the first half, first quarter, and straight out the gate on first downs as well. So Arthur Smith, he believes the Steelers offense needs to be better, and Russell Wilson believes this team on offense needs to be more disciplined, less penalties, and it's a big week coming up, and they can't make the same mistakes week after week against good teams, because that will only lead to disaster. You're supposed to be one of the top teams in the NFL, but if you're having penalties and send your team back every single time you get going, it's only going to end up working out in the other team's favor. For example, the Steelers get to the red zone. They get a turnover. They get the ball within the 20-yard line. What happens? Well, you see the fight that broke out in the end zone and all those penalties the Pittsburgh Steelers got on personal fouls, 15-yard penalties, sets them back. Yes, we could say that should have evened out. The Eagles should have got a penalty on that play as well in the fight for throwing punches, but they didn't, and the Steelers did, and that set the Steelers back. You also look at later in the quarter and later in the half that the Steelers get a holding penalty as well when they're in field goal range on Dan Moore Jr. So it's just little things like that that always seem to happen. And it's not just this game specifically, even other games. If you're always starting off doing good and then you get a big play, but it's set back by a penalty and you end up being in a 2nd and 20 or 3rd and 20 or 2nd and 18, however long of a way to go it is, it's only going to hurt your team and not allow your offense to get going, only going to set you back and hurt yourselves. So the Steelers, they need to be better, be more disciplined, as Russell Wilson, the captain, has said, and also get going more on first downs and in the beginning of the games. This will help the Steelers team, and both the captains, Arthur Smith, the offense coordinator, and also Russell Wilson, say this is what the team needs to do on offense. Now, let's give a little bit of an update on the injury report for the Pittsburgh Steelers. For example, you look at the injury report, and the Steelers had a lot of people miss some practice time, especially here this week and also last week. So last week, you look at the injury report, you had Larry Ogunjobi out, you had Deshaun Elliott out, and you also had George Pickens out. But more players got injured in this week's game. You look at Dionate Jackson. He went out early with a back injury. And then you look at Justin Fields. He went out early as well with a abdominal injury. And then later in the end of the game, TJ Watt, on a play where it looked like he got held by Lane Johnson, it looked like he maybe pulled something or tweaked something in his leg. But after the game, it was revealed as just a twisted ankle sprain. So his status is up in the air. So there's a lot of injuries right now going on for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's not major ones, but it's still injuries. And its statuses are up in the air. But at least we get some good update news on these injuries. For example, George Pickens, who has missed the last 2 weeks with a hamstring injury, he did not officially return to practice on Tuesday because he was still listed as a DNP, but that was listed as a DNP because he didn't take part in the team official practice. He was doing some light jogging on the side. He was also doing some in and outs, drills on the side as well. I guess that's not officially practicing, but he was doing work to kind of ramp up, and it looks like he may end up being a participant in this week's practice and also playing in this week's game against the Ravens. We don't know officially, but it's good news that he's at least back doing these type of things. Also, TJ Watt as well. He was listed as a DNP on Tuesday, did not participate, but once again, today, he was back at practice, not officially practicing, but once again, basically what George Pickens was doing on the side, doing some work and light jogging, and also doing some in and outs and things like that. So it's good seeing him back, and it looks like he's ramping up to return and play in this week's game as well. When his injury first happened, he was grabbing his bottom of his ankle, his Achilles towards it, and we thought, hey, this is going to be bad. This might be a bad injury. It looks like he's in major pain, and if this happens, the Steelers have no chance to do good, because we all know TJ Watt is a leader of this team, the best player on this team, and without him in the playoffs, just like last year, the Steelers stood no chance. So without him, we need him back on the field. We need him to play because he's the game destroyer that we have on defense. So TJ Watt, it's good that this injury is not major at all, and he could even be playing once again in this week's game. And it looks like it was only just an ankle sprain and nothing major, in which when it first happened, it looked like it was based off the pain that he was in. So we got some good news on those two players basically returning to practice, even though they're not officially returning to practice. But on the other players injured, like Justin Fields, Dante Jackson, Deshaun Elliott, we really don't have an update. Same with Larry Ogunjobi. Yes, those injuries just happened, so we're not going to get an update right away. More than likely, they probably will miss this game. But you look at Deshaun Elliott and his hamstring injury. You look at it, and George Pickens missed 2 weeks with a hamstring injury. This is only the first game that Deshaun Elliott has missed, so they probably will be cautious with him and take the same route they did with George Pickens. He more than likely, from my standpoint or my viewpoint on this, he will more than likely miss this game. Also, a groin injury like Larry Ogunjobi, it's good that he's returning to practice. He practiced in a limited fashion, so it's good that he's able to return and it's nothing too serious. But that's the update on the injury front for the Pittsburgh Steelers heading into the Baltimore week, the Ravens week for the AFC North title if they win this game. Looking at just injuries around the league and for the Steelers, it's a shame when injuries happen, but especially towards the end of the season, because this is where you want your healthiest. Obviously, not everyone's be 100%, but you don't want 6+ players on the injury report missing games. And looking at teams like the Detroit Lions, it's a shame they're going through what they're going through, being a really good team for the whole season, and then being depleted with injuries on their entire defense, and now some on their offense with their top player, Montgomery, being out for basically the season. So you look at them getting injured, and now you look at the Steelers getting injured, having like 6 players on the injury report, probably missing this game, who knows. But at this point in the season, you don't want injuries to happen as you're getting into the final push for the playoffs. You want to be healthy at this point in the season. It's hard to be, but the Steelers expect these injuries not to be major, and that's the best part. These injuries should not be long-term, and by time the playoffs, unless new injuries reoccur or more of these injuries get nagging on, you look at it, and the Steelers should be healthy or relatively healthy, other than the players on injury reserve, in which they already have like 2 offensive linemen on there and multiple other players. So they should be relatively healthy based off the players on the 53-man roster. If we're going based off of these injuries, they should be able to get back by time the end of the season. So that's a good thing. At least it's not depleted like the Detroit Lions, who were good all season, great all season, and now their players will miss the rest of the season and really hurt their chances at a Super Bowl. So the Steelers, this is Russell Wilson, Arthur Smith, giving the update on the Steelers offense. You need to be more disciplined and starting faster, and also your injury update for this week's game against the Baltimore Ravens, and TJ Watt and George Pickens more likely being back. But anyway, that's your update. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on both these topics, all 3 topics actually. And make sure you also subscribe to this channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, highlights, analysis, reports, everything surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers I covered. Stay tuned. And until next time, I'll see you guys all later. I'm out. Peace.